So, hello everybody. Just welcome to a very special edition of the Digger Dudes podcast. I'm joined with Jackson, Andrew, and of course, we have a very special guest. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, let everybody know who you are in case they don't know already.
Me on the show. My name is Michael Barrett, former baseball player, coach with the Washington Nationals, most recently, and now currently unemployed.
Well, Mr. Barrett, we just want to say once again, thank you so much for taking your time out of your busy schedule to do this interview with us. We love, just getting personal one-on-one time with these great players like you, just to know like some background behind the game itself and just hear some stories that a lot of behind the scenes that, just casual fans might not know go on in a typical MLB player's life. So I'll go ahead and start off. Now, I know we talked prior to starting this interview, and you mentioned that you went to Pace Academy High School, which, I've been by Pace Academy many times. So it's awesome to know that that's where you played ball. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, you were named the 1995 US Today High School Player of the Year.
The player of the year, but I was on the team. I made
On
it
the
first team
team.
All-American. Yeah.
Yes, sir, absolutely. And that's an awesome accolade to have towards your resume. Now, I just want to ask you, as a young MLB player that was heading towards the MLB draft in 1995, what did adding that accolade to your resume mean to you as a young player for all the MLB scouts to see?
Pretty cool. When I got that newspaper article and saw my name in there with some of the great players, Kerry Wood was part of that. The player of the year was Ben Davis.
Ben
And
Davis, awesome.
Ben Davis was phenomenal. He was a great player. And when, you're looking at a newspaper article and your name's flashed even in the same page with those guys, Ben Davis, Kerry Wood, those guys were being, considered for the first pick of the draft that year. So Ben Davis ended up going second pick of the draft, but with my name in there, it became like like harsh reality really fast that like, hey, the draft's around the corner. This could happen. All of a sudden your dreams are flashing right before your face, like right in front of your eyes on paper.
Absolutely, man. That's awesome to hear. And I think Andrew actually had a question, particularly about your rookie season. So, Andrew, I'll shoot it to you if you want to go and ask your question.
Yeah, so I'm just I feel like, in modern day baseball, we're seeing it become more and more common that we have such very young talent getting into the league a lot earlier than what we're used to seeing. And they're coming in there at a rapid pace, is finding immediate success. So throwing it back a little bit, back when you were a rookie, in 1999, you got into I think you were part of the Expos organization as young as 18 years old. Is that correct?
21. My first full
Okay.
season, I was 22. So we had
22.
we had a
Gotcha.
young squad that year. Yeah.
Right.
But one of the things, yeah, you are seeing Major League Baseball in general. They're younger in age, it seems like, I don't know how true that is. I'd have to get some numbers myself, but it does seem like, especially with my time with the Washington Nationals, when we were getting guys like Juan Soto to the big leagues at 19 years old, to Robles, not much older, maybe 2021 when he was called up to the big leagues, some key pieces to our World Series run, when I was coaching there.
Right.
And that was not as typical for a major league World Series caliber team, to be calling players up that young. But it is something
Mhm.
that we've seen in the past with Andrew Jones, Atlanta Braves,
Oh
if you're a
yeah.
Braves fan, and
Oh yeah.
other teams, from time to time.
So, and you being I still in your 1999 season, such a young age, you did lead all National League rookies in doubles and some other offensive categories. So I guess would you mind speaking about how you were able to maintain that composure and perform at such a high level despite you being a newcomer to the league?
Yeah, I was blessed. Looking back on it, you don't realize how good you have it until, after the fact. But, looking back on my career, my rookie season, having Felipe Alou as my manager was such a blessing. He really just allowed me the opportunity to go out and play. It was difficult in some regards because I was playing third and catcher. So I didn't know if I was going to catch or play third that day until I saw the lineup. But other than that, having the opportunity to be in the big leagues at such a young age, really kind of learning the system as a young man, at the major league level, looking back on it, I didn't realize it, because I was so caught up in just playing and competing. But like, to be able to do that was a blessing, and to have a manager that really just let me play. He let me make mistakes. Um, and that was a gift beyond imagination. I wasn't penalized, but um, the opportunity to be in the lineup, and even if it was playing third or catching, it didn't matter. That just have that opportunity to know that each and every day I went to the field, the manager was going to give me a shot. Those opportunities don't come around very often, and I was blessed, not knowing it as much as I know it now.
Absolutely, absolutely. But Chase, you can go on and carry on with your questions, or Jackson, if you
I,
want to throw one at him.
I got one. Now, looking back, I know you talked about looking back at your MLB career. You had an 18-year MLB career, correct?
Played 16 years total, and I
16 years total?
accumulated almost 11 years of service time at the major level over 12 different years. So I did a little up and down, minor leagues, big leagues, my
Oh,
second year, and then got called up actually, late in 1998, got called up late as a September call up. So 12 different seasons, 11 years, 12 different seasons.
Now, I know over all those seasons, I'm pretty sure you have a ton of memorable moments. Speaking of like 2005, you won the Silver Slugger Award. I just wanted to ask you, over your long career, did you ever have a memorable moment that just sticks out to you the most?
The first at bat, where I wasn't so successful, I struck out, but it was against Kurt Schilling.
Oh, well done.
Yeah,
yeah.
facing Kurt Schilling, my first at bat in the big leagues, striking out on three straight pitches, which I never did, but
Mhm.
just the excitement level, and even though I struck out, it was my first at bat, and it was the most memorable experience. Feeling like I had finally made it, and then walking back to the dugout for three straight pitches, like what just happened? This is gonna this is gonna be a long next couple of days,
A
But
little
then
bit
the
of a
next
wake up
day,
call.
yeah, big wake up call. And then the next day, getting my first hit and first home run off of Paul Bird in Philadelphia, which was super exciting, most memorable. And then, obviously scroll into the next year, my first full season in the big leagues. Most memorable experience was just opening day. The first opening day, having the opportunity to play in Pittsburgh. And then shortly after that, the first opening day at home in Montreal, where I actually hit a home run, and the excitement to be a part of that experience. Breaking camp and making the big league squad for the first time. All of that probably tops anything else after that. There were so many wonderful experiences, wonderful opportunities and games that I played in, but those are definitely by far my favorite. 9 days into my rookie, like getting called up to the big leagues, McGuire hit his 70th home run and I was catching my ninth day in the big league. So it was like, oh my gosh, is this what this is going to be like? It was like,
Yeah.
yeah, the last day of the season, he hit 69, 70 while I was catching. And that experience, it was like something magical happened every day, like the first couple of years. And then
hmm
after a while, you just kind of like get used to it. But those first couple of years, it was like, going to Yankee Stadium, David Cohn pitching a perfect game on Yogi Berra Day, and Yogi Berra, was there in the state. Jakey, talking. Sorry, guys.
no
You're
It's
Uh,
all
problem,
good.
man.
yeah, so on Yogi Berra Day in New York, David Cohn pitching a perfect game, and watching that unfold, and all the Yankee legends and living legends and greats there on the field, and then I want to say probably I think it was the series before that Harold Baines hit the home run record for DHs. I mean, it was like something every series just happened.
Yeah.
So Yeah, I mean, so many memorable experiences I could break it down as an Expo Cub, Padre, as a Cub, it was, I mean, going to play at Wrigley Field was the best thing ever. I mean, every day stepping foot on that field, the magic, just the atmosphere, win or lose, it was just a great experience. And then the memory I had the most with the Padres was I don't know if y'all remember the wild card playoff game where Holiday slid into home plate. I was catching when he didn't touch home plate. Yeah,
Crazy.
yeah.
That's
And
crazy.
then after the Padres, I went to the Blue Jays, which is where I ended my big league career.
Mhm.
That was my last game in the big leagues was with the Blue Jays, and then the next year I tried to make a comeback from injuries with the Mets.
Yeah, I mean, that just kind of goes to show how unpredictable the sport of baseball is, which is why we're all big fans. So it's really interesting to hear that perspective from a player who had to experience that unpredictable outcome every single day. And you really touched home with that Cub talk with Jackson because he loves the Chicago Cubs.
I
So
do not like the Chicago Cubs. I hate them. I'm sorry. I just hate them with a passion. Like,
That's okay. That's okay. I understand. Listen, from where you're from, you don't really have a choice. It's one or
yeah,
the other in some areas.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. It's ingrained in you. And you said you like the Cardinals, St. Louis
yes,
Cardinals?
sir. Yes,
Oh my
sir.
God. I mean, the St. Louis Cardinals and the Chicago Cubs rivalry is like my favorite. I mean, outside of the Yankees, Boston, I don't think you can compare it to anything else. And
Same.
Andrew and Chase, have y'all ever been to a Cubs Cardinals game?
We have
never. I've
not.
only been to Braves games.
It's the
I
most
think
civilized hatred you've ever seen.
Mhm.
It's amazing that like they actually can like walk the streets together. It's
but
really it's really cool.
it's funny to hear you say that because as Braves fans, our biggest rivals, of course, the New York Mets. So we've gone to a lot of games against the New York Mets, especially this previous year, that final series of the season that decided the wild card placements. We went to that doubleheader, and that was like to me that was such an intense atmosphere. But like I can only imagine like the intensity of like a Cardinals or Cubs atmosphere or a Yankees Red Sox atmosphere that to me like it's just like not just one of the biggest rivalries in baseball, but probably one of the biggest rivalry in sports.
Yeah.
I have a son that's 17. He loves Lindor and
Mhm.
So he's a Mets fan. But he loves
Mhm.
Okay.
Lindor. He's a Lindor fan, and therefore he's a Mets fan by
Right.
Sure.
Lindor. Wherever Lindor goes, he's going to pull for that team. But like if you think about when we grew up as Braves fans, and this is kind of changing. Now it's becoming more of a melting pot, a cultural melting pot. People moving in, jobs from all over the world are coming in.
Yep.
You'll see a Mets fan, or someone wearing a Mets jersey at school. Whereas we didn't see that very often. So and that's kind of what it's like every day in Chicago,
Mhm.
where you go to school and you got 50 White Sox fans over here, 50 Cardinals fans over here. You don't know, and you're
Right.
living it. You're having those debates. That's starting to happen more and more in my hometown, Alpharetta, Georgia, where you
Okay.
see people moving in from all over, and those debates and those rivalries are, rekindled at the schoolyard, which is fun for me as a baseball fan. I love that stuff. But
Yeah.
I see all kinds of jerseys these days, which is fun for me. Back in the day, I mean, you saw one jersey. If you saw any jersey, and that was Dale Murphy, Braves
Yeah.
jersey.
Of
That was
course.
it.
Of course.
But
Right.
yeah, I love the history but if you ever have a chance like to go to a Cardinals Cubs game, either stadium is super exciting. And to be a part of that was so much fun. I took so much pride in playing well against the Cardinals. And they had better seasons than we did when I was a Cub.
Mhm.
They ended up winning the division several times, and that wasn't easy to deal with, but just being a part of it was super fun. It's kind of like Georgia Tech versus Georgia football,
Good old
you know?
fashioned hate.
Yeah, good old fashioned hate. That's what it is, man.
Oh
It's
yeah.
the only way to associate it.
Absolutely. And rivalries, they just excite the game even more. But so actually I want to go ahead and transition to my next question. And I always hear for like MLB catchers that they always have their favorite and their least favorite pitcher to catch for throughout their careers. I know through the years you had the opportunity to catch for a lot of notable players, such as Mark Pryor with the Cubs, and of course 2007 Cy Young winner Jake Peavy. So do you personally have a favorite pitcher that you like to catch for? And if so, what was the reason?
Opportunity to catch Greg Maddux for 5 years, and
Oh,
growing
okay.
up in Atlanta, being a Braves fan, having the opportunity to catch him was kind of surreal. And then getting to know him, building that relationship to where he helped me with my game calling, helped me with helping pitchers, more as a catcher. He slowly became one of my favorites. But I had the opportunity to catch some great pitchers. Javier Vasquez had some great years in Montreal. I even had the chance. I was telling a story yesterday that in 1996, I went to my first big league spring training, and the first guy I caught was Pedro Martinez.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah,
Pedro, okay.
yeah.
All right.
Yeah, and to me, when I tell that story, I didn't catch him like in a game. So like in 1996, or I caught him in big league spring training game in 1997. But I really don't count that as like catching him in the game. But when I tell people that story, they're like, "Wait, you did what?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I know. It didn't even seem like much to me then." But
Yeah,
now it's like he probably was one of the best pitchers I caught for sure, but
sure.
didn't really have the relationship that I had with Maddox for 5 years with the Cubs and then Padres. But I had the opportunity to catch Kerry Wood, and Pryor, and that whole staff was just electric. But
Absolutely.
very, very memorable. So many great pitchers over the years. I mean, I could make a long list of my favorites and a very, very short list of my least favorites. I mean,
Yeah,
as long as they're getting people out, right? That's your
that's
favorite
right.
pitcher.
Absolutely.
Makes your job easier.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right,
You
well,
know,
Jackson, you go
I,
take the next question, Jackson.
I do. Now, I know you talked about the pitching side. I want to go over to the catching side. Now, I know as a catcher, you were known for your defensive skills and leadership. What did you consider the most important qualities for a catcher to possess? And growing up or while you're developing your game as a catcher, was there a specific catcher, maybe like a guy, maybe like by the name of Johnny Bench, you tried to model your game after?
Yeah, I was telling a story about Johnny Bench too. And when I tell these stories, I think back on them. I'm like, man, at that moment when Johnny Bench walks into the dugout to talk to you, it's kind of one of those moments where I've got a game to prepare for. I didn't know I was going to meet Johnny Bench. I didn't have time to like really think about it, because if as a fan, I would have been like, Johnny, sign my glove. Hey, Johnny, will you sign me a ball? Like I'm a fan. I'm a fan of baseball myself.
Mhm.
But Johnny Bench walked into the dugout and said, "Hey, kid, let me see your glove." And I gave him my glove, and he put my glove on, and I remember saying, your glove is too small. And I remember looking at his hand and thinking, like, no, Johnny, your hand is just too big.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
nothing wrong with my mitt. He just had these claws, like these huge hands. It's like, things you remember and look back on. But as a catcher with the Expos, I had an opportunity when I was very young to get to know Gary Carter, and he was awesome. Gary Carter took me under his wing. He shared wisdom with me that I had no idea that I would ever get at such a young age. But Gary Carter definitely made a big impact on my career early on. Um, and then as far like I get a little emotional since he's no longer with us, but some other great catchers along the way I had the opportunity to rub shoulders with. Um, but Johnny Bench stories, those guys, man, even just watching, Mike Piazza and how he managed it, little things behind the plate that he never really got credited for. Um, Mike Matheny, for Cardinals fans, Mike Matheny was one of my favorite guys to watch catch during my years as I would consider my best years defensively. But what I found, what happened was when I was with the Montreal Expos, we typically would have young pitching staffs, right? So I kind of fell into this niche of helping young pitchers. That kind of became my reputation as a catcher early on. And I was that's something I took great pride in when I started to get that reputation for handling young pitching staff. And the catcher earn run average became each year it seemed like at the early part of my career started to become like more prevalent. You started to hear about it more and more and more, the catcher and earn run average. And I felt like with the pitching staffs I had and the young guys that I had and helped bringing them into the game and at the major league level, that I took great pride in that stat, the catcher and run average and how well the young pitchers did throwing to me. That was something that I took a lot of pride in. And then scroll a few years down, I go to Chicago and all of a sudden things changed. Our pitching staff they were it was loaded with veteran pitchers. So then I had to kind of train my mind on how to catch and handle a pitching staff with veterans on it, where I never
Mhm.
really had that experience. And so, for example, like catching Greg Maddux, a guy that's got 15 years in the league.
Yep.
15 is a little bit of an exaggeration, but he had a lot of time. So it's like all of a sudden, if Greg Maddox doesn't want to throw what you put down, that's okay. Let him throw what he wants to throw.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
A young pitcher, you'd be like, no, 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 you stay with me,
Right.
stay with me. Now I'm catching a veteran staff of guys that, had a very good idea what they were doing. And, it's learning to kind of shift your focus to now we got to maybe change up to what they want to do more than what I see fit, because it's just a balancing act.
Yeah.
But a lot of
Uh,
that's changed now with the headsets, I guess, and the catchers now are getting a lot of the pitches from the boxes, I guess, from
it's
analytics, right?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I know. I can only imagine how much has changed now, considering what you were just saying too. Because I mean, I guess it goes for both young pitchers and veterans. It's just all about numbers and statistic, and I guess that's just what goes on a lot in those dugouts whenever they're talking about strategic pitching strategies or whatever. But I actually do want to get your perspective on something that has been talked about a lot during the podcast because it's some relevant news that's hit, the Major League Baseball organization, over the last 2 years, really. So, and it kind of ties into your time with the Montreal Expos because they had, this incredible, passionate, and devoted fan base during your time there. And I want to know, how did playing for such a loyal group of fans influence your perspective on the importance of a team's connection to its community? And given that experience, what are your thoughts on the Oakland Athletics relocation to Las Vegas and how that impacts the fans in Oakland?
That's a good question. I wouldn't say a sore subject. It's a soft subject for me, because
Okay.
of being through it. I don't know all the details. It's so political. A lot of it's so political. I don't know all of the details. I don't think baseball fans will ever really know the full details on anything like that. But to see a franchise leave Oakland like that is hard for me. I mean, and,
Yeah.
when you look at how close the Atlanta Braves were to leaving Atlanta,
Hmm. Yep.
and we're able to stay and figure it out. And in Montreal, very, very different than Oakland, I'm sure, but also at the same time, pretty similar, um, infrastructure wise and all that. But the history at Oakland, a little bit richer, a little bit more success during their tenure there than what we had in Montreal. Unfortunately, I hate to say that, but it is true. Whereas Oakland had a powerhouse, organization where they're producing World
Oh yeah.
Series caliber teams over and over and over again with what an unbelievable history. So it's hard to see things not work out there, you
Yeah.
know.
So, for my final question, I'm just going to ask you about the altercation that happened with Carlos Zambrano back in 2006, I believe. Was it 2006 or was it seven?
Seven, 2007.
2007. Okay. And if you don't mind, just kind of talking about, I guess not more so the fact what happened, like what was said during the altercation, but what kind of happened after the fact and how you two handled the situation and how y'all grew from it after the matter.
Situation kind of escalated. It was a day after a day off. I remember, things kind of just the wheels falling off. I mean, anything and everything that you could imagine going wrong in a baseball game for a team going wrong.
Yeah.
And Carlos, who's one of my closer friends on the team at the time, just two guys that are compatible, very, very passionate, competitive individuals, looking across the dugout at one another, like what's going on, and all of a sudden the fingers are being pointed, and Carlos is a good guy, in that situation. I think the situation just got the best of both of us, and it ended up going into the clubhouse, and then from there just got sideways, and like the next day I thought him and I handled it pretty well. It was a matter of turning our focus to what we had to do to beat the Braves the next day. It was
Yeah.
like, okay, we lost that game. Anything and everything in a baseball game went wrong. There's nothing we can do about it now. So all we can do is focus right here on how we beat the Braves or how we're going to win this game. It's like, I guess the learning experience I got from that, and I was actually out that game, but it was how do we, just deflect all of the negative things that had been happening in the season and in that particular game to something positive to move us in a direction where we can, you know, have a better series against the Braves and have a better season moving on from there. And I think that altercation, depending on how you look at it, I was traded not long after, unfortunately, in some regards, in terms of if you were going to stay in a clubhouse and you were going to figure it out, like and get things right. I think from there, I think we went 7-2 after that.
Okay.
Um,
Nice.
so it was like things turned around, and then I was traded, and then they went on to go to the postseason, and then I went on to go to the postseason with the Padres in a playoff one game playoff. So I mean, it ended up working out for all parties, but I think right then and there it was okay. Things can't get any worse.
Yeah.
When teammates are fighting, that's like the worst thing. But that's just how frustrating that game was, and how the season was going, and how are we going to turn this around? Then, it's just the blame game, and nothing good comes out of that to,
Yeah.
okay, now what? You know, we got a long way to go. Now what? Well, you take all that negative energy, all that bad stuff, and put it towards something that's positive, And that was what I learned from that experience more than anything.
And that's awesome to hear about because the thing is like because I know like altercations like this they happen all the time in sports. I think it's all about the passion behind the game. Like these are the players' careers. This is what they've been working their life towards getting to this moment, being the big leagues. And obviously everybody in the league they want to win. So like when you're kind of in like I guess a rough patch like that, I guess things can turn or can end up going sideways, which is why I was curious because I've seen altercations like this happen all throughout sports. I've always wondered, what happens afterwards? Like, what does a team do, like in the clubhouse, in the locker room, to get past a situation like that, to overcome it? I think it's really awesome to hear like how you handle this situation and how the team handled it, and how you're able to go 7-2 after the fact and completely transition a
Yeah.
moment that was sideways, but then turn it into momentum, turn to positive momentum. So I just want to thank you, for sharing that insight. And that's really awesome to hear how y'all were able to turn that whole situation around.
Sure.
Fortunately, we had a great clubhouse to begin with, and it's a band of brothers that those things happen. Let's all work together, and then all of a sudden you start to put things into place where you prevent those things from happening. You'd like to say, well, why didn't y'all do that before the season started? Well, some people step up and in leadership roles at that point that you didn't
Hmm.
see coming. You couldn't have like predicted that some of the guys that stepped up during that time to take the leadership role to end the negativity and focus on the positive things that we were doing. Uh, uh, the guys stepped up and did, and all of a
Yep.
sudden you got a different clubhouse and it's like,
Right.
okay, here we go, let's roll, um, and it's behind you. But it's fair for, fans of baseball to speak of these moments for the betterment
Yeah.
of the game.
Sure.
Right.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And I think, Jackson, you had one final question you wanted to ask Michael, right?
I did. Now, speaking upon those moments and leadership roles, I wanted to ask for my final question before we wrap up this interview about your post MLB playing career and your leadership role with the Washington Nationals. What advice would you give to young aspiring catchers or MLB prospects trying to make it to the league? And what did you take out of your MLB career to give to aspiring players?
The biggest thing for me, in my time with Washington, with the catchers, it was kind of it was difficult, but really, um, the hardest thing was to kind of eliminate the ladder of success. Okay, like for the catchers in baseball, it's so hard not to look at this ladder of success in terms of, A ball to double A, triple A, right? This
Right.
climbing the ladder, this how do I get through the ranks of being a double A catcher versus triple A, all these things. So like during my time with the Washington Nationals, I felt like by the seventh year, it was like I kind of had an idea of what catchers were thinking. If they
Yep.
had to repeat A ball, how do I keep them engaged to get better so they can get out of A ball or double A, triple A? And all of a sudden it's like, all right, guys, y'all got to quit worrying about this ladder. Y'all got to quit worrying about climbing this ladder. You got to quit worrying about, what do I got to do to get out of A ball and what do I got to do to get out of double A? Like that's sometimes out of your control, but what's in your control is just getting better, and
Mhm.
during that time, it's easier said than done, but I tell people all the time, the best thing that ever happened to the Washington Nationals was seeing Juan Soto go through the minor league system so fast. Because when
Yeah.
you're ready as a big leaguer, you're ready. You're going to get the call. And so
Hmm.
for Juan Soto, it was just a testament to the things that I was preaching to the catchers because, you know, a lot of our catchers were having to repeat A ball and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But like focus less on the level of where you're at and focus on improving your game. These are the simple things that it takes to get out of this level. These are the requirements, and I think that was ultimately the where I went all the time with the catchers. Like, don't worry about where you're at right now. Don't worry wherever you're at with the catchers in this world today. You can't focus on getting out of where you're at to get where
Yeah.
you want to go. You just got to focus more on your game, your overall game. And that's the key. And it's so hard for catchers to stay focused on that because there's so many aspects to catching that you have to be responsible to improve. But focus on your game. And the biggest thing is like with catchers, like we want to make such a big deal out of pop times and all that good stuff. Like, I mean, some of the best catchers that ended up making it to the big leagues, essentially were just good at receiving the ball. Like I have to constantly remind guys all the time, go to work on your receiving. You're catching for a reason, receiving the ball and making
Yeah.
that pitcher look good, throwing the ball over plate with just simplify things. Those are the common areas that I would always revisit with catchers during a long season, you know.
That was great to hear because up to
Yeah.
my from fifth grade to about freshman year, it's great to hear this because I was a catcher for baseball, so I understand. I 100% understand where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, the thing is, like, there's so much stress on, the pop times and your
Hmm.
arm strength and all that stuff, and
Oof.
not to say anything negative about the catchers that I had, but You know, I saw catchers with average arms making it to the big leagues, and it's because their focus were on the things that they did well. You know, just
Yeah.
constantly, you know, re-engage your thought process to think positively about your game as a catcher. Because we're right in the at like center of the field, center of all the negativity, all the bad things that happen are right there in front of us. But the
It's
biggest
true.
thing is just staying focused on what you do well as a catcher, and over time people will learn to appreciate that if you stay true to yourself. That's the biggest thing as a catcher because
Yeah, I think
you lose yourself fast behind the plate.
yeah, and I would say it's fair to say that, catching is probably one of the more complex position in the sport of baseball and just in sports entirely, because it is a mental battle at the end of the game and a lot of things you have to worry about, and you have a lot of weight on your shoulders behind the plate, I would say. So yeah, I'm sure, coaching it and trying to lift people up and keep them motivated to become the better version themselves is a lot to do, especially with all those guys, that have to worry about climbing the ladder like you spoke on earlier. So yeah, thank you. That was some really good insight. But Chase, I'll throw it to you now.
Well, Mr. Barrett, we just want to thank you again one more time for taking your time out of your day to do this interview with us. It's great hearing all this different insight. This is like, um, we've interviewed a minor league catcher before. This is the first time interviewing like an actual MLB catcher that had a full-on career that was a part of so many franchises, a part of a lot of history and great moments throughout your career. So thank you for all this insight and just sharing your story with us. It's fantastic to hear from you today.
Thank you.
Be on the show. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely, man.
Absolutely.
great
So
meeting you guys, and best of luck. Keep me in the loop.
Sure,
100%.
absolutely.
We will.
Absolutely. So we'll let you go now. Again, thank you so much for your time.
All right,
Thank you.
have a good one.
You
You too.
too.
You too. Thank you so much.